It's funny, the silence of an old house. At first, you think it's peaceful. You hear the floorboards sighing, the wind whispering against windows that have been there for centuries. You mistake it for calm, but you learn sooner or later that old houses are never actually silent. They're just waiting, waiting for you to be quiet enough to hear what they've been trying to tell you. My partner, Sarah, and I, we thought we'd found our forever home, a place we could fill with our life. We never dreamed it was already full. We never imagined the silence was just the sound of something holding its breath. The real estate listing called it a survivor, a colonial farmhouse tucked away in the hills of western Massachusetts, built way back in the late 1600s. For us, it was everything we'd ever wanted. We'd been living in sterile, white-walled city apartments for years, dreaming of a place with some real character, a place with a soul, and this house, it had soul. From the second we walked up the worn stone path, it felt like it was welcoming us in. The huge oak door opened into a world of wide plank floors, hand-hewn beams, and the smell of old wood and smoke. The heart of the home was the fireplace. It was colossal, a walk-in hearth made of river stone, big enough to roast an ox and stained black with generations of soot. We were in love, instantly. The first few weeks were a happy, chaotic blur. Unpacking boxes, painting walls, spending our evenings on the floor with a bottle of wine, just staring at our new life, completely amazed by our luck. We were so busy planning our future inside those old walls that we never once stopped to think about the lives that had come before us, the joys, the sadness, the fears that were soaked into the wood around us. We thought we'd found a beautiful piece of history we could live in. We were wrong. It wasn't a home. It was a prison. The art we found wasn't art. It was a cage. The carvings we would discover weren't some builder's signature. They were a warning. We'd learned they were a kind of demon trap, with a design going back more than 400 years. And in our happy, clueless curiosity, we may have just unlocked the door. Section 1, the discovery. It all started with a creak, not one of those charming old house creaks, but a sharp grating squeal from the floorboards right in front of the hearth. It was a high traffic spot, and after about a week it was driving me nuts. I figured, how hard could it be? I'd pull up a board, shore things up, and be done with it. It was a perfect Saturday morning. Sunlight was streaming through the wavy, colonial glass, making patterns on the floor. Sarah was in the kitchen humming. It was the last perfectly normal moment we'd have for a very long time. I grabbed a crowbar, knelt down, and started working on the board. The old nails screeched, but it slowly came loose. It was a thick piece of pine, and as I lifted it, a puff of dark, musty air blew up from underneath. It smelled like dry dirt, dust, and something else. Something metallic and bitter, like old blood. I looked into the dark space below. I was expecting to see a support beam, maybe some ancient dust bunnies. I was not expecting to see a pattern carved into the massive oak subfloor. It wasn't crude or random. It was a series of intricate, overlapping circles carved with incredible precision. They flowed into each other in a single, unbroken line, making a shape like a six-petaled flower. That flower was inside another circle, which was connected to a web of straight lines radiating out, covering the whole beam. "Sarah," I called out, my voice a little shaky, "you've got to see this." She came in and knelt beside me. "Oh my God, Alex, what is that?" "It's beautiful," and it was. It looked like a secret piece of art left by the person who built the house. We ran our fingers over the carvings, tracing the impossibly smooth lines. We were giddy. We hadn't just found our dream home. We'd found its secret. We took a ton of pictures, sending them to everyone we knew. "Look at the incredible folk art we found." That night we sat in front of the fireplace, the loose floorboard leaning against the wall, leaving the carvings exposed to the air for the first time in who knows how long. As the fire died down, a chill crept into the room. It was more than just the night getting cold. It was a deep, penetrating cold that seemed to come right out of the fireplace. Sarah shivered and pulled a blanket tighter. "Suddenly feels spooky in here," she mumbled, half joking. I got up to poke the embers, and as I stood over the exposed beam, I felt it, a weird, low, rhythmic thrumming under my feet, like a giant cat purring deep in the earth. I froze, the house was silent, the thrumming stopped. I must have imagined it. Just the house settling, I said, mostly to reassure myself, but for the first time the house didn't feel welcoming. The shadows seemed deeper, the familiar creaks sounded less like a sigh and more like a whisper. That night, lying in bed, the silence felt heavy, like it was watching us. We had opened something, and we had no idea what we'd let out. Section 2. The first whispers. The shift was subtle at first. The kind of thing you can easily convince yourself is all in your head. It started with things getting misplaced. My car keys, which I always put in a bowl by the door, showed up in the sugar canister. Sarah's favorite paintbrush disappeared from her easel, only to turn up a day later tucked inside my shoe. We laughed it off as moving brain, just stress and exhaustion. It made sense. Then came the sounds, not the normal groans of an old house. This was new, a soft, rhythmic scratching from under the living room floor, right where the carvings were. The first time, we both froze. It was the sound of a fingernail dragging slowly across wood. Scrape, pause, scrape. I grabbed a flashlight and looked under the floorboard again. Nothing but dust. The scratching stopped the instant the light hit it. We told ourselves it was a mouse. The cold spot by the fireplace was harder to explain. It was a column of frigid air, about 3 feet wide, right on the hearth. Even with a fire roaring, that one spot stayed freezing cold. You could step into it and the hairs on your arms would stand up. Our dog Buster, who loved sleeping by the fire, would whine and give the spot a wide berth. Animals always know first. The real turning point for me came about a month later. It was late after midnight. Sarah was asleep and I was reading in the living room. The house was dead silent. Then I heard it, a whisper, so faint it was almost just a feeling, a low hissing murmur that seemed to come from everywhere at once. I held my breath, listening. It came again, and this time I could almost make out a word. It was like hearing a conversation through a wall. My heart was hammering. I walked around the room, trying to find where it was coming from. It got stronger as I got closer to the fireplace. I knelt on the cold hearthstones and put my ear near the dark opening. The whispering was clearer here. It wasn't one voice. It was many, a chorus of low, urgent whispers slithering up and down the chimney. I couldn't understand the words, but the feeling. It was pure hatred. I scrambled back like I'd been burned. That's when Sarah appeared at the top of the stairs, her face pale in the moonlight. "Alex? What's wrong?" she asked, her voice trembling. I heard my name. My blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" "I was dreaming," she said, "and I heard a voice clear as day whisper my name right in my ear. It woke me up." We just stood there, staring at each other. This wasn't in our heads. This wasn't the house settling. Something was here with us, and it knew our names. The beautiful mystery of the carvings was gone, replaced by a cold, creeping dread. The house no longer felt like a dream. It felt like a trap. Section 3. The investigation. The wonder was gone, replaced by fear. Our conversations switched from paint colors to hushed, frantic debates about what we'd heard or felt. The house had turned on us. We started to see things, a flicker of movement in the corner of your eye, a tall, thin shadow that would vanish the moment you looked directly at it. We became obsessed. The carvings had to be the key. Our curious Googling turned into a desperate investigation. We spent days hunched over our laptops, a growing fear reflected on our faces. We ditched search terms like colonial folk art and started using words from our nightmares: ritual symbols, warding marks, fireplace, witchcraft, protection, colonial America. That's how we found it, a dusty-looking blog run by a retired history professor, a man named Dr. Alastair Finch, whose niche obsession was early American folk magic. His site was full of photos of old buildings with strange symbols scratched into them, and there it was, a black and white photo of a beam from a 17th century English house. Carved into it was our pattern, a 6-petaled flower made of overlapping circles. The caption read, "Apotropaic mark, specifically a daisy wheel, found above a hearth. C1650, apotropaic, a word of Greek origin. It means to turn away evil. These weren't decorations, they were shields. They were more commonly known as witch marks. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through his articles. We learned the practice was brought to colonial America by English settlers who had a very real belief in the supernatural. To them, demons and witches were a constant threat. People used these marks to protect their homes at the most vulnerable points: doors, windows, and especially fireplaces. The hearth was considered a gaping, dark highway for evil spirits. King James I himself, in his 1597 book Demonology, warned that evil spirits could enter a house through any opening. His paranoia about witchcraft was intense, and we found an article about a historic home in Kent, England, where builders carved dozens of these marks around a fireplace in 1606 to protect the king. During a visit, the date hit me, that was over 400 years ago. The most chilling part was how the symbols worked. The daisy wheel, with its endless interlocking lines, wasn't just meant to repel evil. According to Dr. Finch's essays, they were based on the idea that demons were simple-minded. A spirit would be forced to follow the line, and a line with no beginning and no end would trap it forever. They weren't just shields, they were cages. A sickening dread washed over me. I looked at Sarah, her face lit by the screen, her eyes wide with the same terror. "Sarah," I said, my voice barely a whisper, "the board," when I pulled up the floorboard. She finished my thought, her voice trembling. "You broke the line." That simple act of fixing a creaky floorboard suddenly had a horrific new meaning. We hadn't just found a secret, we had broken a seal. The scratching, the whispers, the cold spot. It wasn't the house, it was the prisoner, realizing its cell door was, finally, after centuries, broken open. The fireplace no longer looked like the heart of our home. It looked like a wound, and we knew that whatever had been trapped inside was now loose in the house with us. Section 4. The Truth and the Terror. We were way past trying to rationalize things. I found an email for Dr. Alistair Finch on his blog, and feeling like a complete fool, I wrote to him. I told him everything. His reply came in under an hour. It was short: "Do not, under any circumstances, attempt to disturb the surrounding floorboards." "Can you talk on the phone?" My heart pounded as I dialed. An elderly, reedy voice answered. "Mr. Davies?" "Alistair Finch, please tell me exactly what you did." I poured out our story. He listened patiently, only interrupting with sharp questions. "The carvings are on the main summer beam?" "Yes, and this beam runs directly under the hearth?" "Yes, exactly. Is there a smaller secondary flue in the chimney, maybe bricked up?" I went to look. There was a small arched opening, sealed with newer bricks. When I was done, there was a long silence. "Mr. Davies," he began, his voice grave, "your house was likely built by Puritans living in a state of profound spiritual anxiety. They believed the woods around them were the devil's territory. What you've found, based on the specific combination of symbols, the daisy wheel, the V marks for Virgo Virginum, the Virgin of Virgins, and the grid-like demon maze, this wasn't a preventative measure. They weren't trying to keep something out. They believed something was already in." My throat was bone dry. "In the house?" "In the chimney, most likely," Dr. Finch said. "A disused flue, like the one you described, that would be seen as a perfect nesting place. A dark channel into the heart of the home. So they bricked it up, but for them, that wasn't enough. They had to spiritually seal it. They laid a trap." He explained it with chilling clarity. "Think of it as a spiritual landmine. The endless lines were meant to ensnare a non-corporeal entity. The power of the symbols, fueled by the terror of the people who carved them, created a psychic cage. It was hidden for a reason. It was meant to be a permanent solution. And we broke it," I whispered. "You kicked the door off its hinges," he said bluntly. "By removing that floorboard, you broke the continuity of the outermost circle. You didn't just open the cage, you signaled to the prisoner that the guards were gone. The scratching, the whispers. That's the entity testing its boundaries. It has been starved for over 300 years. Now it's awake, and it's hungry." After that phone call, the activity became blatant, aggressive. Doors would slam shut with hurricane force in a draft-free house. Hear a deafening crash upstairs and run up to find every single book thrown from the shelves. We could hear words now, vile things whispered right behind our shoulders. One evening, Sarah screamed. I ran into the living room to find her pressed against the wall, pointing a shaking finger at the fireplace. The air in front of the hearth was shimmering, like heat haze off summer asphalt, and inside that shimmer, for just a second, I saw it, a shape, impossibly tall and thin, a twisted silhouette of a man made of pure rage, its head cocked at an unnatural angle. It wasn't a ghost, it was something that had never been human. The shape dissolved. But the cold stayed, the house wasn't ours anymore. We were just the keepers of the cage we had broken, and the thing that had been inside was now roaming the halls, letting us know with every passing moment that we were not alone. We were its property. We've been documenting everything that's happened since that night, every sound, every sighting. We've been sending it all to Dr. Finch and a small group of people he's put us in touch with. The situation is getting worse, and honestly, we're terrified. If you want to follow what's happening, to see the evidence we're collecting, or if you've ever gone through anything like this, please subscribe to our channel. We need to know we're not the only ones. We need all the help we can get. Conclusion: there's no need tending to a story that's still happening. After the night we saw the figure, we had a choice: run or stay. Dr. Finch gave us what he called a dangerous and likely futile suggestion. He said the trap was powered by belief, and maybe it could be repaired by belief. So, in an act of pure desperation, we tried to fix it. We got a book on the geometry of apotropaic marks. With trembling hands, we tried to recarve the broken lines on the original floorboard to make the circle whole again. Then, following a fragment of a 17th century text Finch sent, we recited a prayer of binding as we nailed the board back into place. It felt insane. When the last nail was hammered in, the house fell silent. The oppressive weight in the air lifted. For the first time in weeks, the house felt quiet, peaceful. We held each other and wept with relief. We thought we had done it. We had put the monster back in its box. Of course, it was a false ending. We were woken at exactly 3:33 a.m. by a roar, a deep guttural roar that erupted from the fireplace and shook the entire house. It was the sound of something that had tasted freedom, only to have the door slammed in its face, and it was furious. Every door in the house flew open, every window rattled, the temperature in our bedroom dropped so fast we could see our breath. We aren't living with a quiet prisoner anymore. Our clumsy attempt didn't fix the cage. It just enraged what was inside. We reminded it of what it lost, and in doing so, we focused all of its ancient, hateful attention right on us. Now we live a life of negotiated terror. We don't go in the living room after dark. We never let the fire go out completely. We sleep with the lights on. The activity is a constant, low hum of malevolence under our lives. A book sliding off a shelf, a low growl from an empty corner. The clear sound of a third set of footsteps following us up the stairs. We thought we were buying a house, but a house isn't just wood and stone. It's a container, sometimes for lives and sometimes for other things. We bought a home, but we inherited its prisoner, and now, every single day, we have to ask ourselves, who are the real prisoners here? Is it the thing trapped in these ancient walls? Or is it us?